Whether you're writing a short story, novel, Dungeons & Dragons campaign, or any other type of roleplay, it's going to be a pretty lonely place without a world to walk around on. You want depth, history, and most importantly, the feeling that things keep happening even when the main characters aren't around. I'm DC Ferguson, author of the Wicked Instrument series, and this is Top-Down World Building. You want to begin with your concept here. What kind of world setting are we going to begin with? Where do our characters start? And everybody loves a variety pack, so let's just use some examples across genres. We have medieval fantasy, apocalyptic, and dystopian. In Singer and the Charlatan, we begin in Kingsfield, the largest city in the world. We're going to go for pre-industrial with magic. Walking Dead has us in a modern-day sleepy suburb outside Atlanta, and Hunger Games puts us in the futuristic District 12 of what used to be North America. Now, we know where we want to be, so that's our setting. Let's put that as a pin in the map, but then we're going to go big. Yay, it's everybody's favorite subject. Nothing gets me going, if you're like me, talking about fault lines and river valleys and political borders. Those sweet, sweet political borders. Now, in the Singer and the Charlatan, Kingsfield lies here on the map. We have mountains to the north, and that's where our dwarves are. The forest beyond them is the home of the elves. To the west we have Saul, which is the arts capital of the world, and south is Southvale, which is a major port town. Now, we're just spitballing here. We're putting points on the map where we want things of interest to be. They should always be either plot relevant or plot adjacent. Relevant means we're going to visit them directly, while adjacent means stuff happens there and the repercussions will ripple over to our characters. You see that in the Hunger Games. It's got 11 other districts and Panem that controls them. Panem is plot relevant, while the 11 districts are largely plot adjacent. The same thing with Walking Dead. We follow our characters into camps around Atlanta up towards Washington, D.C., with other camps being plot relevant, while the world outside is largely just plot adjacent. So here we're map making and we're drawing these smoking hot political borders or territories that someone has dominion over. Maybe you're going for kings or presidents or tribes. I love a good warlord. Map making is a whole nother animal. In my opinion, it's a very personal one. So I'll leave that to you. I will say, however, it's very, very important you do learn a good bit about geography if you're making your own world, because it does actually become important in the next part. Where your main location is actually in relation to the world should start making things very interesting. You get to flavor your hometown with a dash of salt before you've named a single character in it. All you need to do is start looking at the map you've made. Go on, take a look at it. It's a handsome devil, isn't it? The areas around this home location, they start forming relationships by geography. If you've done it well, they start whispering little stories to you. So, for example here, in The Singer and the Charlatan, Kingsfield is centrally located. If the dwarves up here want to fish in Southvale, they go through Kingsfield. Human artists looking for inspiration from the elves, halflings coming east to preach about the god of trickery, it all goes through Kingsfield. With a dense and packed city like this, it's going to see traffic in every direction and from 4 distinctly different races. The geographic setup doesn't allow it to work any other way, at least not in peacetime. So how do humans in Kingsfield like it? Are they tolerant of the other races? Is there one they like better than the others? Was there a war in the past that make these factions possibly harbor bad feelings? In The Walking Dead, you have the same story. We have Rick and his people in a camp. They have strong walls. The next one over is Hilltop with their easily defended high ground. The Kingdom has a freaking tiger on defense. And then we have the Sanctuary, which is a factory behind layers of security fences. The Hunger Games is a funny one, but I chose it as a good example. The districts are all under the tenuous control of Panem, and they're depicted as simple folk doing their best to survive. So in this case, the district is not unlike the humble farm village trope that you see in everything from Lord of the Rings to video games like Chrono Trigger. It's plain, it's simple, it's banal, and nothing is said to make you think the districts are any different until you get to a big city. The point here is that you want to think critically about the history of these locations and their interactions with each other on a macro scale. Start big, and then we get smaller. This is that top-down approach that we're talking about here. So you should try dissecting your favorite book or film or game in the same way, and it'll give you a feel as to how their worlds were constructed. Now, a lot of people like to start here, and stories will suffer for it. You can end up with plot holes that a decent-sized starship can fly through. Or you're going to murder your biggest ally, which is suspension of disbelief. We're going to get to antagonists later on, but if you want a mad king running amok like Joffrey on bath salts, you better have a damn good reason how he got there, how his people feel about it, how other places deal with him, and so on. Now, let's tear into the details. Town maps and the like can be useful, but again, very personal and need to be done well. While you should definitely look into that, this is more about building a world to live in, not zoning it. I could draw the city of Kingsfield from memory, pretty crudely, but it might surprise you to know that I've never worked with a map, despite playing this as a campaign in Dungeons & Dragons for 4 years and writing an entire series of books on it. As long as you know where everything is and you can communicate that in words, it isn't that important. What is important is the details in the atmosphere. In The Singer and the Charlatan, a massive merchant square sits in front of City Hall, like an outdoor flea market. To the west, we have the Knights Guard barracks, and beside it is Tops Inn, a den of mercenaries. It gets a bit rowdy. Now, in this section, you want to go to the Noble District in the west. All roads that you could take to get there, the one you least want to take is Tiger Street. It's a slum. Even the Knights Guard turns a blind eye towards it, even if there's a murder. Back alley dealings, ladies of the night, roughest taverns in the city. Kinda sounds like that's where all the fun is, story-wise. There's bound to be some adventure in there, so much so that the Tiger Street area appears in all 3 of my books. Now let's look at Walking Dead, especially the more recent seasons. Alexandria is a great walled community full of safety and beds and houses and civilization. That's terrible. We can't stay there. It's a rule. We have to go out, we have to make a run for supplies. Maybe Abraham has jock itch, he needs an ointment. God rest his ginger soul. But we're in the wild, and anything can attack us. We can't outrun it, because everybody died in gridlock, and now there's trucks everywhere. So you go east, and you step into sanctuary territory. So somebody's going to get beaten to death. Good stories are always hinging on challenges to your hero's safety. Whether that's mental, emotional, or physical, you have to have change. And that segues right into the Hunger Games, because boy, do we like change. We like it so much we're going to change the whole damn system. So, the Hunger Games works with dichotomy. What you have here are the haves and the have-nots. They're 2 very basic systems, so extreme in fact that they're almost caricatures of themselves. In District 11, everybody is so plain. They eat oatmeal for breakfast every day, and if you so much as sprinkle cinnamon on anything, you are jailed as a revolutionary. These people wear plain clothes, they do plain things, and then someone is coming along and they look at the stars and imagine what if with their big, bright, doughy eyes. And then there's the haves, which take a kind of Marie Antoinette, you let them eat cake and we'll sacrifice children on live television kind of thing. You never really think you're going to do a critical analysis, people. You never think you're going to do a critical analysis of the Running Man with children, but here we are. So, the haves are bad, but the have-nots think they're too plain and simple to rise up, unless someone shows them how. Like the whole system was just sitting on a powder keg and needs a match. What we want to do with these details is focus on the little things, key details of your city, the rulers, the big players. Now, if you've been building from the top down, then you already know how the citizens feel about themselves, how they feel about their neighbors, and any major character in these places is going to be either with or against the status quo. And that, coupled with their power, is what makes them interesting. So, let's go right to an example for this one. Take City A, make it friendly towards other communities, have it get pillaged by a roving gang of bad guys. Let's have the people we want to fight these bad guys. but their numbers, they're not good enough, and they don't have weapons. So we'll make their leaders spineless and selfish, giving in to these bad guys. And here we have Gregory, leader of the Hilltop. He's in a seat of power, but he'd rather not rock the boat, so he keeps the status quo, which is against the wishes of his people. It sounds to me like his seat would be ripe for the picking if a scrappy lady came into the camp with a bunch of guns and maybe a chip on her shoulder. What's important about characters like Gregory, and why we're talking about him, is that he broke a rule I alerted to earlier. He stays in the safe place. Outside is for adventure, for protagonists, for players, PCs, whatever you want to call them. The guy who goes to sleep safely every night is not a main character. He's a device to move the story forward, or an NPC. You can invest a lot of effort in fleshing out these power players in your world, but beware, they should never, ever, ever be more interesting than your intended protagonist, and yes, I'm looking directly at you, Balthier. Point is, don't let these characters overshadow your heroes. You see it in Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, Hunger Games, Lord of the Rings. The seats of power get very, very scant screen time. Even though that might be very impactful, it isn't much in the grand scheme of things. So now we have a very basic start on how to go from the top down in world building. A lot of this is going to be kind of left open to interpretation, but that's important because it's your world. At the end of the day, you're the one who has final say over it, and you're the one who's creating it. So I hope you've armed yourself with some knowledge about top-down world building, so get brainstorming, and look out for my other videos on world building basics. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to see new world building basics videos.